Hello, this is Jadon Sancho. You're listening to Yellowwallpod.
Hello and welcome to episode 315 of the Yellowwallpod. I am your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund's DFB Pokal exit against Werder Bremen and the 3-4 loss away to Bayer Leverkusen. And then we will preview the Friday night game against Eintracht Frankfurt, and for that joins me Matthias Zug. Hello Matthias, how are you doing?
Hey Stefan, I'm doing okay, sipping some yerba mate and staying awake because of it. How are you doing?
Yeah. Do you know this meme with a cat that sort of has flashbacks from the Vietnam War? This is how I always feel when I have to announce all the losses that Dortmund went through the week that we have to talk about.
Yeah, so don't even remind me. I mean, yeah. I say don't remind me, but we're actually going to talk about it, so never mind.
Well, but the good thing, Matthias, is there is always a reason to do this show. And this reason is Clint Westing, who is sponsoring this episode. He's from Australia, and he wrote us a long email about how his dad, who has his roots in Germany, introduced him to the love of the black and yellow. And he has asked us to dedicate this shout out to his children, Max and Zilla, and his twin cousins, Dirk and Sören, who are from Germany, and his late parents, who infected him with a love for BVB, and obviously all the other black and yellows from down under. So Clint Westing, thank you A for your email, and B for sponsoring this episode. And with that, Matthias, we can dive into the clusterfuck that was the 3-2 loss away to the Werder Bremen team, which is right now, 16th, 17th? Spoiler alert, they could not use that momentum they built in the DFB Pokal to beat Union Berlin, because that was a pathetic 2-0 loss. You see, usually I would say I don't know even where to start, but I know exactly where to start, and it's what Lucien Favre said after the game. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, our first half was not good at all. We were shit at ball possession. We lost all our challenges, and there was a lack of movement in the second half. We had scoring chances, but it didn't work out. And Florian Kohfeldt said, among other things, for the first time in months, we had positive stints in possession. For the first time in months, Matthias. What does that say about this character of this team? Going to Bremen, standing around.
I think Michael Zorc described it best as lahmarschig, which is obviously a German term for just lacking everything, slow, no intensity. And at some point, I thought, I don't remember if I wrote it or not, but I know I thought it. It's like they didn't care. They're like, if we get knocked out of this, yeah, so be it. You know, we'll try a little in the first half. Now, the second half is a completely different game. Now, what I will say is, was it Bittencourt, the screamer?
Yes.
If he does that 10 times, 9 times, it's going nowhere near the goal.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because on the Rasenfunk someone actually counted, and he had 6 mini steps to adjust his body position before pulling the trigger there.
Yeah, but still, I mean, even if there's nobody in front of him in practice at high quality guys, they try to hit it like that 9 times out of 10. They don't hit the target. So,
9 times out of 10, Marco Reus doesn't botch his clearance.
Yeah,
I hope.
You know, what gave Bremen the lead in the first half was not because they played so well, not because they created great chances, because they didn't. They just did not. It's the intensity that they played with. They did a good job in disrupting Dortmund's passing rhythms and pathways. And then their transition was extremely fast. Yes, they had stints of possession, but I think stints is the right way to formulate that. It's not like they had long passages of possession. It just comes down to intensity in the first half and who wanted it more. I mean, you could talk about mentality, but that plays into it because on paper, Dortmund are significantly better than Werder Bremen. They showed that in the second half when Bremen, aside from obviously the third goal, did virtually nothing. And just sat back, and despite trying to be compact and defensive, Dortmund carved them open, but just couldn't quite get that third and fourth goal, which was just a little bit too much to ask to always get that. And then there were certain situations where just the wrong decision was made with the pass, also in the second half. But you just saw that with Haaland freaking out a few times going, dude, pass me the ball in this situation. But it all got botched in the first half. I know I said on Twitter, and some people gave me flack for it, I said Bremen deserved to win the match. I rewatched the match. Let me revise that by saying Dortmund didn't deserve to win the match because of how they played in the first half. It's semantics. It's nitpicking, but it's an important distinction. It's not, Bremen didn't outplay Dortmund one-on-one over 90 minutes. They didn't. But in the first half, the match was done. And in the second half, where Dortmund played so much better, and obviously Gio Reyna scoring an amazing goal. I mean, if you're going to score your first goal for a senior team at Borussia Dortmund, that's one heck of a way to score it. But it just wasn't enough at the end. Did Dortmund maybe deserve extra time? Yeah, they created plenty of chances. They were significantly better in the second half, but because of the first half performance, I kind of say they didn't deserve to win it. And maybe Bremen didn't deserve to lose, so I guess Bremen deserved to win in a roundabout way.
The first thing about Dortmund not deserving to win is I don't think they should be allowed to get away with such a first half performance where it was. I think I tried to look up lahmarschig and what the best translation would be, and there were words like träge and teilnahmslos and obviously lethargisch in German, and it all translates to lethargic, and then lahmarschig translates to bloody lethargic, which made me crack up. But no, honestly, it was just bad, and it was also very disappointing. Well, it shouldn't have been, because we all should have seen it coming based on previous experiences with this team and the gaping contrast between the home and away form. But knowing it's a cup match and knowing that Werder Bremen can develop into a Hexenkessel, the Weserstadion, you kind of knew that Bremen was always going to be up for it, especially since I think the time Bremen knocked Dortmund out of the German Cup was exactly 364 days ago. So Dortmund should have been warned, but they did not heed any warnings and were basically relying on things going to work out all by themselves. And we're going to talk about this in the Leverkusen segment as well. And I mean, there's a famous line in hip hop, ain't no such thing as halfway crooks. And there's also no such thing as halfway defending. And that is sadly what Dortmund is doing right now. And yeah, it's very disappointing to see them come out like this and not be ready for the game at all. So just based on this alone, they should not be allowed to play in the German Cup anymore, at least for this season, which they aren't. And the good news is Bremen have drawn Eintracht Frankfurt, and for Dortmund it's always good to avoid as many games against Frankfurt as possible because they tend to hurt. So yeah, I don't know what's worse, the first goal and the error of it was sort of a bad touch by Julian Brandt, then played to Hakimi, who then, I would say, got pressed, but at the same time needs to play a better pass, loses it, and then Julian Brandt has a chance to re-win it in the box, doesn't, and I think it was then Davy Selke who pounced on that shot from, was it Rashica? And
I believe so, yeah. But of course it had to be him.
Yeah, obviously. You know, I think I said it on the show before that Davy Selke always tends to score against Dortmund somehow. But I actually think, you know, these are the individual mistakes we have learned to love and cherish from Dortmund, especially on that right side. We know them well and dear. But I think what is worse structurally was the 3-1 that Dortmund conceded. Because Yuya Osako had literally the size of Australia to move around there in midfield. Axel Witsel completely out of position. And, I mean, if the pass is played, maybe a center back could move his line to press the midfielder, but that thing did not happen. And then you had Osako with the time and space to send a ball for Rashica in a sprint against Mats Hummels, and you always know these things don't go well. Obviously, Rashica hits it extremely well, but we know that he's capable of doing that because he's done it before several times. He's sort of developing a little bit into the new Son Heung-min Son against Dortmund, I fear, because he's always hitting these shots with a little angle. So yeah, it's quite annoying. Especially because Dortmund seemed to be getting back into the game. Haaland, who came in at halftime, made it 3-1. And yeah, but that didn't happen. So disappointing, and also a game that exposed really where Dortmund have, you know, a lot of room for improvement. And I guess we have to talk a little bit about the Gio Reyna incident. I think Julian Brandt said after the game that the biggest problem with it was the momentum killer, because Dortmund were really pushing for it, and then VAR comes in and, I don't know, takes 2 or 3 minutes to review it. I think in the end, the decision was to book Reyna for a dive, and then who was the attack against? Moisander?
Moisander, yeah.
Yeah, the shove or whatever, was then basically obsolete, and then both got a booking for it, or just Reyna. I don't even remember. I think Moisander got one then for complaining afterwards or something. It was just a weird way to decide it. Do you think this should have been a penalty because Reyna got shoved while the ball was still in play and the fall occurred in the penalty area, or do you agree with the dive decision?
I vehemently and completely disagree with it. I think it's absolute garbage. First of all, I rewatched this match because I'm just that much of a glutton for punishment. I did the same thing with the Leverkusen match. Obviously, just removing some of the emotion and then looking at it from a more analytical viewpoint. That situation, I don't even think Gio Reyna did a dive, to be honest. I've seen egregious dives, and that wasn't it. I think it was just a coming together a little bit.
Yeah, it's not going to move into the Iron Robben Hall of Fame.
No, it wasn't a dive. It wasn't a deliberate attempt to get a penalty. It shouldn't have been a booking. So I guess this idiotic referee's thought process is, you know, if there may have been an infringement before, I don't care if you stab a guy in the face afterwards. That just doesn't matter. I mean, that's, you know, taking it to an extreme, but what Moisander did by the rules was a Tätlichkeit, as we say in German. So he physically attacked Gio Reyna. He didn't punch him, but grabbing a guy by the shirt like he did and pushing him down is a foul. If that happens anywhere on the pitch, it is a foul. It is at least a booking, if not actually a red card, in my opinion. Could have given a red card. The ball was still in play. The play was still going. It was a penalty. It's just the thing of, well, because I think Gio Reyna did a dive before, which, how can you see that on VAR and make that type of decision? I'm sorry, you idiot. But then, to then say, because of that, what happens afterwards doesn't matter, is total bullshit. It's total crap. What if Dortmund would have scored a goal after that? Would that not have counted? Or if Bremen would have scored a goal? Or if there would have been a 2-footed lunge in someone's face? I mean, it's just idiotic. It should have been, in my opinion, a red card for Moisander. It should have been a penalty because a foul occurred during a live play in the penalty box. There is no doubt about that. And I agree that with Brandt that it killed the momentum because now everything was about that. So the referee made an idiotic decision in that situation. Not only, maybe you could say Moisander shouldn't have gotten sent off for what he did. You can argue that point. Should have been a penalty in my opinion. But hey, for the second, and the same thing in the Leverkusen match, we'll talk about that as well. There's a certain player that scored a winning goal that, in my opinion, should not have been on the pitch anymore. At that point, but hey, that's not the reason why Dortmund lost a match, but it certainly doesn't help.
No, it's just there to annoy you a little bit more. That's what it is for, basically. The part that's really annoying about the Bremen game, obviously, is the injury of Marco Reus, who I think injured his groin while taking one of his classic Marco Reus on the turn shots. Maybe he was a little bit out of training and his muscles weren't used to this move, because I don't know if it was the first shot the game he had or the second or so, but yeah, it's very unfortunate. He will miss now 5 to 6 weeks. Dortmund said that he approximately won't be able to train for 4 weeks, so I'll add another week or 2 for recovery. I really hope they're not rushing him, but I feel they might, because the games against Schalke, Wolfsburg, Bayern are coming very soon. I think mid-March. So yeah, I guess you want to have him back for that. So yeah, we'll see how that turns out, but it's obviously a big blow for Dortmund to not have the captain and someone that is as important as Marco Reus. And yeah, I also don't think Dortmund did too well without him against Bayer Leverkusen. It is true, and I will say this, that Marco Reus in recent games wasn't really the star of the show, and he himself had a lot of poor individual performances. Obviously, still with the scoring output, especially in the home games, we all know that he has, I think, scored 10 out of 11 at home. But yeah, it sucks, because he's a very good player, and it sucks even more that now Brandt is out injured too. We are not entirely sure for how long that is, but yeah, I guess we can move on to the Leverkusen game, because that Brandt injury happened very early on in that match. Lars Bender, I think Julian Brandt even said after the game that he didn't think it was a foul. I thought it was a foul. I thought it was a yellow card worthy foul. Yeah, he just rolled his ankle, and I thought he was going to go off right away, but they waited until halftime, which probably doesn't make matters better. Now, Dortmund said that he is out against Frankfurt on Friday, but might be playing against PSG. I would say this, from my own experience with the club, they are not always entirely honest with injuries, so it might just be that they want to play the old smoke and mirrors game and leave Thomas Tuchel in the dark. But my prediction is he's probably going to miss a little longer than just one game. But I hope Dortmund for once can be trusted in that regard, and he will actually be back. So anyway, Matthias, I completely agree with that sentiment. I think Lars Bender had, I think 2 or 3 yellow card worthy fouls, if not more. And, for Leverkusen, he was basically the MVP in the game. If you follow the Bundesliga bulletin from Abel Messeros, you will already know that Dortmund basically had the entire game plan designed in a way that they will find Julian Brandt as often as possible in the center of the field. And if you take him out, obviously, that sort of ruins this plan. So in that regard, it had a massive impact. And obviously, we all know Julian Brandt's amazing ability to play key passes. He did so against Werder Bremen a couple of times in the second half. Haaland nearly scored by rounding the keeper. Then I think he set up Gio Reyna for the first chance that was saved by Pavlenka. So we all know what Julian Brandt is capable of, especially in the second half. So that was obviously a big miss. And then Lars Bender obviously not involved in that key situation, but also the goal that wasn't from Jadon Sancho. I have to honestly say, though, I agreed with VAR. Maybe I'm in the minority here, but I thought that the pull from Gio Reyna there on his arm was enough for a foul. Yes, Lars Bender, I think, tucked the shirt first, but I still think Gio Reyna did enough to bring him down and foul him. And since the attack went from right to left across the pitch, I think he might have still had a role to play to defend it or whatever, and he didn't. So I thought it was a correct, albeit very frustrating decision to call it back. I think Lars Pollmann called it an overcorrection. I don't know what your opinion is on that particular situation, but yeah, I thought it was a good call.
Begrudgingly, I have to agree with VAR on that. It was a stupid foul. There was no reason why Gio Reyna needed to do what he did. It had an impact.
He's still a baby, and
yeah.
If babies, if you give them a finger in their hand, they automatically grab. That's how it works. It's just how nature works. You're still a baby. Yeah.
No, I get that, and I'll get into my opinion on the fact that I don't believe he should have even been on the pitch, but that's a different story. Be that as it may, what it did was it eliminated the possibility of a defender to disrupt the move, and so it's probably it is the right call. No probably about it. But Dortmund still played well in an attacking sense. And as far as Gio Reyna being on the pitch, in my opinion, given the importance of the match and the tide of the match and the position that technically we're looking to fill with Brandt, it speaks volumes as to A, Gio Reyna's development, and B, where Mario Götze sits in the pecking order of this squad. Because if you would think about it, the prototypical swap for Julian Brandt in that type of role would be Mario Götze, and I will argue that Götze would not make that same foul. So I guess my question to you now, Stefan, is what? Obviously, we don't know. This is pure speculation. But why put Gio Reyna in a situation like that when arguably Mario Götze would probably be the better fit, and obviously a more veteran player that, you maybe need in a situation like that?
Well, I think Lucien Favre, first of all, knows that Gio Reyna can play in the more central position, and he's just watched him against Werder Bremen, had good minutes, and thought to himself, well, this guy is in form and can help us out, and thus he plays. And I think Mario Götze is right now, for Favre's perspective, is really like the last ditch option. Like if nothing else works, then Mario Götze comes out and plays for like 4.5 minutes. I also wouldn't have made this decision, especially because this is such a high profile game and Dortmund really, really, really needed to win this. But on the other hand, I appreciated him giving the trust to a youngster that has a future at Dortmund, unlike Mario Götze. So I can understand.
It was a risk, but
it was a risk, and it might have paid off, but it didn't. And as we all say, hindsight is always 20/20, and the digit sum of 20/20 is 4, which is also the margin to first place now. So It all makes sense.
Nice, smooth transition there. But I questioned the substitution the moment it happened. I'll be honest, you know my opinion of the player. I would have rather seen Dahoud in that situation.
Wow.
You know, just because
I think everyone listens to this needs to pause the podcast for like 30 seconds and take a deep breath and just reminisce of what Matthias just said.
But in all seriousness, I saw that and I went, no, that is a mistake. That is wrong. This is too high stakes. This is too good of a side. And, Bosch isn't an idiot. And it's just, and given the players, you have both Bendas in there and all that kind of stuff. It was like sending a lamb to the slaughter. It felt in my heart. And I was like, I wouldn't have made that call. I think Götze or Dahoud would have been a significantly better fit in that situation. Also when it comes down to pressing resistance, and playing out of certain situations.
Yeah, it's about composure, really.
Yeah,
Mario Götze usually has composure.
Exactly.
Other players.
And obviously Dahoud isn't known for composure at all times.
Yeah, but he's known for aggression, which could
correct.
Maybe too.
Correct. So it felt in the moment as the completely wrong substitution, in my opinion. And that's where I put a little bit of the blame of these results on Favre in this case for that substitution. And then, in my opinion, the whole setup, is wrong, in my opinion. I'm sorry, you can't use Hakimi as a wingback anymore. You just can't. He is a complete and utter defensive liability. And Guerreiro is great creativity in creative sense, but positionally, he's bad. He is bad in a defensive position. I watched the game even the second time, and there were certain situations where I'm like, where the hell are you to both those wingbacks? And Guerreiro a little bit less so than Hakimi, but they just leave spaces in the areas that they are responsible for. And if you look at the goals that Dortmund has conceded for the most part, leaving out obviously some ping pong goals or a crazy screamer from 20 meters out, it's the same goal. It is the same Volland, Rashica, Vargas, and I swear to God, we're going to concede the same fucking goal against Eintracht Frankfurt.
Kostic.
It's Kostic. It's that breakaway pass where if it's, the saving grace in the first half, why Dortmund didn't concede 4 goals, is because Akanji was on Rashica and he could match his pace. That was the saving grace at least 3 times. But if it goes the other way and you have Zagadou, who doesn't have that kind of acceleration, he may have pace, but he doesn't have turning acceleration. And whereas Hummels can turn, but then he loses out on pace, you're going to concede that because your wingbacks are so high up and they're so positionally blindly unaware of their defensive responsibilities. You're going to concede that same goal again. And I'm going to put it down now. Dortmund will concede that goal again against Frankfurt. Guaranteed.
I have nothing further to add.
And I was not going to rant. I even told you I'm not going to rant today. But it's just when people hammer on Akanji, oddly enough, Zagadou, nobody hammers on him. I don't know why he's a sacred cow for some reason. Nobody criticizes him. He was not good against Leverkusen. Akanji was in these 2 matches, Akanji was the best of the 3. But the problem is those 3 defenders, you could have 5 defenders back there. If you leave those wings so exposed and you have your defenders pushed so high up against a team with pace, Paderborn, then you are going to concede that. You can have the 3 greatest defenders in the world. And to me, the 3 we have right there are well above Bundesliga average, but you expose them over and over and over again. And that is the situation where I blame the manager. I don't blame those 3 defenders. I don't blame Hakimi and Guerrero. They are who they are. In those situations, you have to be smarter against who you're playing against, especially in situations when you're not chasing the result anymore. Or in the beginning when you're like, maybe we need to build up a little bit differently. But sorry to get back to Bremen, they were so static. There was no movement, which was also part of the problem, which you didn't have against Leverkusen, but then you were so exposed. To me, Hakimi cannot play there for the next few matches. Put Piszczek there because he's less of a defensive positional liability. Yes, you have less creativity going forward, but you've got Sancho up there. You've got Hazard will be playing, and you've got Haaland up there. You don't need that from him necessarily. Or I don't know where Moray is in the development process, but just something else. Or put Emre Can in that position because he could do it too. And so people who keep on hacking on Akanji for some reason, they need to wake up and understand there's more to it than his occasional mistakes. The mistakes are also created by the pressure that's put on him by the positional mistakes from the wide players or not pressing centrally in the right type of situation. Axel Witsel, I'm looking at you. Or even Julian Brandt. And Emre Can, I think, will help this team in those situations, but it's still a little bit too early for him. So that's it. I'm done ranting about that.
All right. So, here's the thing. I think overall Dortmund played a good match for 70 minutes or so. I thought, I mean, sure, the way they conceded the 2 goals was not ideal. Especially the one after the corner. Very annoying because these things keep happening. Now we do not directly concede from corner kicks, just from the second ball played back into the box because Dortmund then just lose focus, which isn't ideal either because still kind of dangerous, happened against Cologne, now against Leverkusen, maybe pay a bit more attention to sides from the Rhine area when they inbound again after a corner kick or a free kick, might want to pay attention there. I don't know. Yeah, that thing. And, obviously the biggest problem then, and, I think everyone in the Dortmund front office sort of lost their minds after the 75th minute or so when Dortmund just got so passive. Just inviting Leverkusen, like, if there's one thing you should not do against Leverkusen, is just sit back and don't do anything. And I think the third goal that Dortmund conceded is just a masterpiece of defensive errors. I think, first of all, you have Witsel and Guerrero leaving the channel to Kai Havertz open for Jonathan Tah to play it right through. First of all, there's no pressure on Tah. Okay. Then you can still say, well, Kai Havertz is in a good position and it's smart positioning by him to be in that channel, but I think either Witsel or Guerrero should have the awareness. But I honestly think Zagadou should have moved and left the back line to prevent that, because that's something very effective that, for example, Werder Bremen did against Marco Reus the entire game. Whenever he received the ball in midfield, there was a center back leaving the back line and pressing Marco Reus and either pushing him into his own half or winning possession, something like that. I think Zagadou needs to learn there to be a bit more take a bit of risk. It can go, you can look very silly against Kai Havertz, but if you don't press him at all, you will look even stupider, to be honest. So that's a big error right there. Then Mats Hummels was sort of caught in no man's land, and yeah, Kevin Volland was all by himself, and Emre Can then, after already, I think, suffering cramps, is then there to play that, that sliding tackle, but he plays the ball straight to, who was the goal scorer in the end? Was it Paulinho? I forgot.
Wasn't that, shoot. Yeah, exactly, him.
So, yeah, no, it was Leon Bailey, right?
That's right, Bailey. It was a few seconds after I said Leon Bailey wishes he was Jadon Sancho. Of course. So it's my fault, really.
Well, you see, and you just said earlier that we should not hack too much on Akanji, but I have to say, I don't know when his birthday is coming up, but I would like to buy him a mirror if he can turn his head and see who is behind him, maybe. Because, Peter Bosz might have had a flashback to his days at Dortmund, where ball watching was like the number one theme for a whole half season. And that was pretty bad. So, literally everyone involved in that sequence, from Jonathan Tah to Leon Bailey in the end, every 4 or 5 Dortmund players around that who could have done something about it did exactly the worst thing possible. And this sort of bodilessness is then what you get. So to me that was even worse. And then I kind of already knew that the fourth goal was going to follow suit, just because it's that time in the game where Dortmund then can't recover, where they can't flick that proverbial switch anymore, and it's just all shambles and no one's really on any position. And yeah, I mean the fourth goal that Lars Bender scored, he was a bit lucky that he hits the header just so, but also the advantage over Mats Hummels, because he was rushing, Hummels was just standing there literally, and no one obviously closed down the person who played that cross. So it's just very, very disappointing that Dortmund can piss away a 3-2 lead in Leverkusen within 80 seconds or so. I think that's the most disappointing part from a fan's perspective. This is like, losing there is already annoying considering the high stakes weekend that it was, but then doing it in this fashion is just such a Dortmund thing to do, and just the most egregious way to do it. And it's a little bit heartbreaking, but this, we should be used to it by now.
Well, I have those conversations on Twitter, especially with people that have come to follow Borussia Dortmund just over the last few seasons. I said, I've been a Dortmund supporter my entire life. I'm over 40 years old. This is Dortmund. This has always been Dortmund. It doesn't matter the players. It doesn't, it's like being a Tottenham fan, will Spurs it in the end. It doesn't matter who the players are. It just kind of seems to be the MO. It's like Leverkusen. There's just teams where it just happens that way.
Yeah, but the thing about Dortmund is it's not always that way. Like, obviously stupid stuff always happens in football to any team. Even Bayern do stupid shit every now and then. So often they don't get punished for it. Like that Benjamin Pavard pass straight to, I don't know, Timo Werner or so. But yeah, I don't think it's entirely in Dortmund's DNA. I think there are worse teams that can bottle things, but right now Dortmund are morphing into that team a little bit more. Obviously I don't have that rich history of observing Dortmund as you are. Maybe this is like the overall theme with a couple of seasons where it doesn't look like that, but I don't think Dortmund usually don't bottle things by not fighting for it. Sometimes they're just very stupid and dumb in ways some goals occur, but this is a new level of bottling it by just not fighting hard for 90 minutes. And I think for the average Dortmund fan, this is really the biggest frustration, that you can almost not recount a single 90-minute performance where Dortmund for the entire time were in control and sort of aware of what they were doing. You can lower the intensity, then you just need to be a little bit more in control with the ball, or more compact or whatever. But this is just shambolic headless chicken defending where nobody knows what they're doing, and it's tragic.
No, I mean, I'll agree with you. There was that, I would say, 4-year spell maybe not the last season of Klopp, even though they showed some resiliency towards the end, but let's say, the last 3-4 seasons of Klopp, first seasons under Tuchel, where Dortmund suffocated and controlled the opposition more often than they didn't. And especially under Klopp, they just never gave up. I mean, you can see that now. Klopp's Liverpool, the amount of late goals they get to win, that's simply down to the mentality of the squad. And, Emre Can and Mats Hummels both spoke to that exact topic, post-match. And for Can, it was interesting because, he diagnosed it within, a week and a half of being there, going, yeah, this team basically has a mentality problem when it comes to that. And it's not everybody. I think if you look at players that don't give up, definitely Bürki doesn't give up, Hummels doesn't give up, Can doesn't give up. You also have to say that Haaland does not give up. He's got fire in his belly, but there are just players in the squad, and you can see it. You can just see it in their body language. Sancho does on occasion. Guerrero absolutely does. Hakimi absolutely does. Zagadou does. Akanji does sometimes. Witsel even does sometimes. And that's very dangerous given the position he plays. And Royce doesn't give up fighting. He just gets frustrated. And, that's not as bad because at least there's passion there, but then he makes bad mistakes and stuff like that, screams at the ref, even though that doesn't bother me at all. I've screamed at plenty of refs in my life, both as a coach and a player. I like that actually, rather than that passivity. And I think back to, the match against Hertha, when was it the Davy Selke goal that was chalked off? The heads dropped when they thought it was in, especially Guerrero. You just saw him go, ugh. And then it got overturned and everything worked out in the end. I just think there are a lot of players on that pitch that are weak mentally when it comes to adversity. And that's an issue. Piszczek is not that guy. He's breaking down, but he's, physically he's not quite there anymore. How can he be given his age and the miles on those tires? But I'd rather see him at the end of the match than Hakimi, because I know Piszczek will not quit. He will not stop. And those are just issues that you have in the squad. And if you have 11 players on the pitch, having 5 guys that don't give up and 6 guys, and say 4 or 5 that give up and 1 or 2 that are so-so, you're going to lose matches like that. Everybody has to buy in and everybody has to give 100% all the time, even when things aren't working out. And I just don't see that from key players. Again, I don't mean to bash him that much, but Hakimi is one of them. Guerrero's another one. It just doesn't come across like they give a shit. Or if they do give a shit, that they just give up at the first sign of things getting difficult. I'm not going to say that necessarily about Zagadou, because I think he's always just a very calm, even-keeled dude. So whether they're up or down, he seems to have the same demeanor. Whereas someone like Hakimi, when they're up, he's hot. When they're down, he's just nowhere to be found. And that's where those mistakes happen, because somebody misses an assignment and bam, you concede against a good team like Leverkusen, or even against a crap team, but especially against a good team like Leverkusen.
Yeah, I think that's the problem, that it almost doesn't matter who you play, whether you play against the best team or not. But I feel like these are the things we especially point out when Dortmund travel to the Allianz Arena or when they play the derby against Schalke. And, I think the main criticism really has to go toward Michael Zorc there, because this is a problem that's not just this year, but several seasons now. And I really do think that Dortmund need to also look more at the character of players in several ways. There are people comparing Alphonso Davies and Achraf Hakimi, but I think that comparison is a little bit moot, because Alphonso Davies has that hustle. He is the guy who sprints back and wins these matchups and does everything you can. And to put a bigger point on it, I poked a little bit of fun at Dortmund on Twitter after the scoreless draw between Leipzig and Bayern, that they're rubbing it in by both keeping a clean sheet. But I have to say I thoroughly enjoyed that game, not because of the result, but there were two teams ready to fight and defend for every ball and had that will to protect their own goal for 90 minutes. And yes, mistakes were made and chances were missed, but I still think that everyone did everything or their utmost to defend their own goal. And if someone made a mistake, like a Pavard, then you had a David Alaba running back and blocking the shot on the open line and stuff like that. Obviously, Timo Werner and Leon Goretzka had a big chance to score, and this game could have went either way. But that was really a big contrast to Dortmund this season, and it couldn't have been a bigger contrast on this weekend, really, between two teams that really want to win a championship and are hustling and doing everything they can for it with a lot of aptitude, you have to say. I mean, this Upamecano is pretty good. But yeah, I mean, you're seeing Thomas Müller out there. You see Bayern's fullbacks, for example, and the same thing can be said about Leipzig. We all know that they're very athletic. But I would also say that Hakimi is athletic. Rafael Guerreiro can also run. So I'm 100% with you in that analysis, and I don't think it's going to change towards the end of the season. So while mathematically Dortmund are still very much in the title race with 4 points, I think just the sort of way this team is set up and made up and composed, it's just not going to be enough, because these games against Leverkusen or whoever will happen again and again. So that's just what it is, and we have to live with it, and it's very disappointing. And it's on Michael Zorc to find players that do it better, even though I think Guerreiro will stick around for a long time, and Hakimi, I can see him stay on as well. So something you have to deal with in one way or another. I like that Emre Can said, we just have to play dirtier, a foul here and there. Michael Zorc at today's press conference said that there are no points for winning the fair play ranking, because Dortmund, with 21 yellow cards, I think, have the fewest yellow cards in all top 5 international leagues. So that tells you something about how nice they are, and they're a little bit too nice here and there. And I think Lars Bender really has shown. I mean, he only got 1 yellow card, but he destroyed like 3 players. I think this one tackle against Haaland, which to me was also a glaring yellow card, wasn't even a foul. So I think it's smart to always go a bit over that line and to be a bit more brutal than it should be allowed statutorily, because you get away with it. And Bayern have shown that again and again. We've all cried foul, literally, about so many times Ribéry doing stuff and Robben getting away with another dive, and obviously in the Champions League final, Dante on the yellow kicking Marco Reus in the stomach, and it's not a second yellow. All these things just remind us that you can get away with a lot of stuff on the football field, and Dortmund should play a little bit rougher and brutalize the opponents where they can. So now the question to you, Matthias, since you so masochistically watched the game again against Leverkusen, what did you make of Emre Can's performance? And now that Julian Brandt is injured for at least one game, where do you see him play? Do you think he will be in a double pivot next to Witzel? I don't know if Thomas Delaney can be back, but do you think that Lucien Favre will now bring out the old cement mixer again?
Borussia Dortmund, going back to your earlier comments, are on the edge of being what I would consider a soft team. They're soft. And if you think about Dortmund's successes that they had, you had players like Sebastian Kehl, Sven Bender, Neven Subotic, Kevin Großkreuz, Kuba Blachikowski. these were all guys that fought, that would also stick one in, they weren't gamesmanship players.
Not to forget the good old Marcel Schmelzer.
Of course, Schmelzer, Piszczek, you name it, Roman Weidenfeller, I mean Lewandowski. I mean, yes, he was world class. So that's, it's not a fair comparison. But I mean, Holland does incorporate a lot of that. He'll get in, he'll get stuck in, he'll gamesmanship-ish things. So I think that's the issue right now. Dortmund are just soft. And you're not going to change that this season. That's why I agree with you on that. That's why Emre Can is so important. That was the right type of player to bring in because Michael Zorc was that type of player. Michael Zorc was an extraordinarily good Bundesliga player, but he was never a superstar. And you think about the players he played with in Dortmund's glory years in the 90s, he had Matthias Sammer on his side. He had Andi Möller wasn't necessarily a hard player. Oh, but he could game people. There was no doubt about that. He knew how to fall and when to fall. Just ask Karlsruher SC. There was just a famous scene of him, such a blatant dive. But Dortmund got a goal out of it. So I'm not actively asking for people to cheat, but play the game as it's meant to be played at times. No, to me, it's you push it to the edge. I don't like diving. I'm not a fan of that. Well, I don't mind getting stuck in.
Let's rebrand it and say we want a little bit more shithousery.
Yeah, I'd rather take dives out of it, kick someone, get physical at times. It's okay. You don't have to take away the technical qualities of a side by also bringing in some physicality on occasion. So anyway, where do I see Emre Can in the next match? I don't see him.
I've forgotten that I even asked the question.
Yeah, I don't see him in a defensive role in the sense of in the back three or in a fullback position. I absolutely see him sitting next to Axel Witsel. You have to have it against this side, against Eintracht Frankfurt, where you've got the destroyers in central midfield who are their only job is to kick the shit out of players that are more technical. I mean, Sebastian Rode is in there for crying out loud. That's his thing, and that's not saying it's bad. That's just the role he incorporates. And I think Can is the type of player that can kind of help with that a lot. His performance, I think in the first half, he was very rusty. He misplayed a few passes. Positionally, he kind of seemed to drift a little bit, didn't quite know where to go. But then in the second half, he definitely found himself. I mean, that one tackle, unfortunately, didn't stop a goal, in the sense of the play still resulted in a goal. But his goal-saving tackle, that was world-class defending. A world-class tackle, positioning, hustle, running for a player that was cramping up, that had missed a lot of match fitness time. That's the type of fighter that Dortmund need in the squad. And so I'm really happy to see him. And I think he'll play in the double pivot with Witzel. And then once Brandt comes back, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him in the back three. I don't know about fullback per se, or if they go switch to a 3-man central midfield with 2 strikers up top, kind of that 3-5-2 type formation. So that seems to be, to me, that's where I would rather see him than in the back three, because of the amount of lax pressing and defending in central areas that have also led to the defensive line getting exposed on breakaways.
That's the problem. We get exposed on the wings and in the center. So tell me where we not exposed.
You can shut down the wings by playing Piszczek instead of Hakimi, in my opinion. That'll also solve a lot of issues there, and maybe asking Guerrero just to hang back a little bit. And then you put Can.
Do you want Piszczek go up against Kostic? I mean, that's also,
Where's the difference? Okay, maybe he'll get beaten on pace, but if you, but with Hakimi, he'll get beaten on position. So I would rather Piszczek at least trouble Kostic, and then you have Akanji on that side who has the pace that could help out. He showed that against Bremen with Rashica, in the first half, especially a few times, rather than a player not even being there and Kostic having all the time in the world to do something. I'd rather there be something there than nothing in that situation. But again, I think Can will play in the double pivot with Witsel.
Yeah, so my question to you is before we leave, obviously Witsel right now has come under, I think, deserved criticism for not closing down opponents and making tactical mistakes. And I think that's also just because he's overplayed. I think that a fresh Witsel doesn't make these errors necessarily, and we've seen the same dip, let's say, at the Rückrunde last season, and I feel like I'm watching the same movie again. And I was hoping in the summer that Dortmund would find ways to mitigate that and rotate him more and sit him more so this doesn't happen. Now, having in mind that Dortmund play on Tuesday at home against PSG, do you think in this current situation it would make sense to just bench him, only play one half or whatever? Because I don't see how much sense it would make to play him again. Yes, you need a very robust midfielder, but do you think Favre should just go with the Can Dahoud double pivot and screw everything else?
Well, obviously these players can benefit from some time off, given the amount of matches played. But then you got to ask yourself, what are you going to do? Is it going to be Can and Dahoud or Can and Götze? I think that's actually one of those could be a viable alternative against Eintracht Frankfurt, because I don't think the game's going to be won and lost in the central area per se in this match, given how Eintracht like to attack. If you think back to how they played against Leipzig, it wasn't necessarily the central area that was the issue. It was more at the wings. Yes, they compacted the central areas so Leipzig couldn't play through it, but again, the attack definitely came from out wide. So if you want a little more steel in the middle, maybe you do put in a Can Dahoud double pivot and give Witsel some time off. Or you start with Witsel and then you take him off after 50, 60 minutes, given that you've got a big match against PSG, who have a lot of attack, but also a lot of defensive liabilities, which should make for a fun match. So I personally would like to see Witsel given some time off. I don't know if that's going to happen, especially because this is a Friday match, so you have an extra day of recovery-ish, rather than if Dortmund were playing on a Saturday. So probably going to see Witsel play.
I've cried a lot about scheduling, but I think this time Dortmund actually had a nice schedule here. I think obviously you don't want to play against Frankfurt on a Friday night game because that's just going to hurt. Frankfurt in prime time, they will do anything they can, and that already bodes disaster. But yeah, it's going to be interesting how Dortmund will fare without Reus and Brandt. Brandt obviously one of the big key players, so there are big shoes to fill. I wonder if Dortmund then basically play with Sancho, Hazard, and Haaland as a front three, and then have Witsel and Can in midfield, or Dahoud and Can, or whatever. This is what I expect. I don't know if Gio Reyna will start. I would say no. I think you would have Hazard and Haaland there, and obviously Sancho, and then hope for the best that it somehow works out. I don't know. I'm not too optimistic, but this is a home game, and maybe this Leverkusen game did something to these Dortmund players in a way that they hustle a little bit more. They certainly have to. They've certainly been warned. I mean, if you watch Frankfurt games, you know it's going to hurt. It's going to spark. So yeah, I don't know. What's your prediction for this game, Matthias?
2-2.
All right. Yeah, I that would have been my prediction, but then I'll do one more and say 3-2, just because I'm trying to be positive here. So yeah. Anyway, that wraps it up for this week, Matthias. Once again, thanks for coming on and doing this with me for a good hour or so. Please tell our listeners where to get in enlightening discussions with you on Twitter.
Maybe not right post-match, but you can find me on Twitter at Matthias Hug.
Wonderful. You can find me at Stefan Butzko on Twitter as well. You can find all of us at Yellowwallpod on Twitter and Facebook. And if you want to subscribe to the podcast in various means, please do that via Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and of course YouTube, where I urge you again to subscribe to our channel because that helps us with monetization at some point. So just a couple extra cents here and there might be nice. And obviously, if you want to sponsor an episode like Clint Westing from Australia, please go to patreon.com/theyellowwall, and then you will find the button where you can pledge $10 once, and then I will give you, your fan club, or however you want it, a shout out. And yeah, that's all for this week. As always, thank you for listening. Until next week, goodbye.